We are talking about juxtaposition, and I wanted to invite Bari J. She is known for her patterns and her bold style. Bari, how would you describe juxtaposition at all? And then you can talk about how it works within your artwork.
For me, juxtaposition is, placing opposites next to each other. Anything that's next to each other is just juxtaposed, but for me, juxtapositioning opposites is what is like lights a fire.
And that's what you like to do within your art.
Yeah, and within my art, I love to have it feel like there's kind of this vintage quality that also has a very modern quality. And I think that the main thing that I do in design and art is pull together opposites, whether it's in the style of a painting, a collection of fabric will have something that feels very vintage, something that feels very modern, something that feels very digitally done, something that feels very hand painted, a floral, a stripe, an animal print. All of those put together are what comprise a collection that then feels really usable to me.
When I look at your fabrics, for example, I do see that you have these beautiful hand-painted florals, but it'll be coupled with geometrics, animal print. What made you bring those two together?
It really does start from decorating for me, and for whatever reason, that is what I'm attracted to put together, because I feel like if everything's the same, then it all mushes together, and then it's like just a lot of sameness, and you can't really find what the focal point is if there's not contrasts. And when there are contrasts, you can find that focal point. Like that bright floral is not going to stand out if there's four other bright florals. Yeah. So usually there's maybe one or two, and they're different scales in a fabric collection, for instance, or a wallpaper collection. Well, wallpaper is different because you're not mixing and matching necessarily wallpaper. Anything that you're going to put together, I feel like it has to have opposites in it. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's just a big mush. Like, when you're thinking about planning a quilt, you're definitely looking to make the focal fabric stand out. So maybe you're going to use the solid in your quilt, with your focal fabrics.
Would you say that you're more into creating visual interest than harmony? Like if you're going to swing one way or another, do you think that goes with this way of working?
I think there is visual interest, harmony in visual interest. I think that you have to have the harmony and you have to have the balance in order for it to work. And it is visually interesting when there is harmony.
And I wonder too, does it have to do with timidity, where people, artists, especially newer artists, might feel afraid to go beyond the bounds of what's going to match and, be consistent in their style. Mm-hmm. And yet having this confidence, did you feel like you always had it? Do you feel like it's maybe a personality thing?
I think it's a little bit of a personality thing. And I also think it's beginner's brain. If you know what beginner's brain is, I have always kind of kept that beginner's brain because I wasn't trained in art. And so I'm always making stuff up as I go along. And I think that when you have beginner's brain, there's less boundaries for you, and you can do whatever you want because nobody gave you any rules. Now, if somebody gave me rules, it could be different for me because I tend to follow rules, or I tend to wonder how something's supposed to look, that kind of thing. And as soon as I get that it's supposed to look like this kind of way in my head, that just cuts off any creativity.
Keeping that novice vibe, that feel, actually keeps you creating more sophisticated work. That's very counterintuitive, I would think.
I think at the beginning, I didn't create sophisticated work. I think the practice is something that you have to do too, but always being open to another way of doing something. I think that's helped me. And then that's helped me, and to not have taken too many classes that have told me one way or another. And I never had anyone really deeply critique my art. And I think it's probably good to have a critique in some sense, but I was in theater school when I was in college, and the deep critiques really propelled me to quit theater school. I mean, I think just my constitution couldn't take it. And I think that for me, just kind of a little bit of working in a vacuum on my own does help, so that I'm not feeling like there's someone judging. My husband just mentioned yesterday that how much I hate somebody looking over my shoulder. It's like, I'm like, I literally cannot work if somebody's looking over my shoulder, because I'm worried they're judging me.
I
So.
compare myself to a cat. Do you feel like you resonate with a cat personality?
Yeah, I'm definitely not a puppy. I'm more like, meow. Yeah. Yeah, a little bit.
So before we got on, you were talking about your beautifully messy studio.
Mhm.
What has brought on that bit of a tornado of all the things that you've created, just all meshed into one spot? It's lovely.
So we're working on launching a new website for that. It's going to be mostly business to consumer. So all products that we're creating, and that some of them are licensed products, but most of them are products that we're creating. And so I've had to do a lot of photography in here. And so that wall back there is actually a faux wall. It's on wheels. We can move it around the room. And there's wainscoting at the bottom. You can't really see because the couch is in the way. But so that's been our little like set to do photos in. And then on the other side, there's an inspiration wall also for photos. And then over here, I've been painting. And then my studio mate does jewelry in here. So it's just mass chaos here.
What are the things that you're featuring
on our website? Mm-hmm. So things that are made from my fabric collections for Gallery Fabrics. We're doing napkins and placemats and bags, and we have kimonos coming out, which is really, really exciting. The samples are being shipped to me this week, so I got to photograph those when they come in. And then things that I'm also having printed, blankets, and we have beach towels. What else do we have? Phone cases, so a lot of the usual things, and then some other things that we're having handmade. And then I'm also doing, I'm actually sewing some pillows, just a very limited dose. And the goal is to eventually just move everything out to a little bit larger manufacturing.
Wow. That sounds so exciting.
It's exciting. So we're really investing, and we're going to place ads, and we're going to do the whole thing and really try to make a real go of this. I mean, I think I've built the business to a point where it's recognizable to people within the industry. And now we want to bring it to people outside of the industry. Yeah.
And what are other ways that you have kind of put your brand out there while we're talking about it?
I think that because I've diversified beyond fabric, which, is my absolute first love. I, worked with Joybird Fabrics, and I worked with Loloy Rugs. I think because I've stepped in a bunch of different directions. So there's the DIY home sewing community. And then there's the interior design community on top of that some are DIYers and some are absolutely not DIYers. So kind of keeping my hands in both pots. And then and also the having Bloom Wild, having my book come out in 2020, I think that really helped us go a little bit beyond where we were before. And it was also because I was standing in those two worlds that I was able to do that book at the time, the DIY world and the interior design world. That's a little bit more, not DIY.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome to hear. And I want to just say, I love your style, because this style that employs juxtaposition, which we often think of as subject matter, I would say that for you, it's more of even juxtaposing different styles within that style to create an eclectic style, which is actually surprisingly an evergreen style, right? It's not anything that's trend and is going to fade. It's basically all the things that you love placed together, and by a professional, by somebody who does it well, create that consistency, that harmony, those threads that you might not otherwise connect on your own.
Yeah, I hope it's evergreen. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks for talking with me. And
yeah, of course.
I'm inspired, but you know what? I'm going to ask you for one more thing. If somebody has never combined different looks or elements, what is your first go-to? What's your tip for them?
For combining prints and patterns, I always say that contrast plus commonality equals pattern missing success. So you're going to have things that contrast. So you're going to contrast your scales, you're going to contrast your types of patterns, and then maybe you have a color that's the thread that goes through it. And that's the success to me, is when you have those things that can contrast, but there's that one little thread that goes through. That's
Write that down. That was
contrast
great.
plus commonality. Well, thank you,
Bari.
Yeah, it was great to be here.
Exploring your style is a huge endeavor, which is why in Watercolor Bold, we are going through it from A to Z. J is for juxtaposition, with a continual stream of lessons to keep you inspired. And check out here on YouTube the other artists in this series from A to Z, Exploring Style.